Hey, welcome to the Sunday preview for this 17th Sunday of the year. And today we have a reading from the Gospel of St. John, and it's from verses 1 to 15. It says, Jesus went across the Sea of Galilee. A large crowd followed him because they saw the signs that he was performing on the sick. Jesus went up the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. The Jewish feast of the Passover was near. When Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him, he said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" He said this to test him, because he himself knew what he was going to do. Philip answered, 200 days' wages worth of food would not be enough for each of them to even have a little. One of the disciples, Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, said to him, "There's a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good are these for so many?" "Have the people recline," Jesus said. Now there was a great deal of grass in that place. So the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. And Jesus took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed them to those who were reclining, and also as much of the fish as they wanted. When they had their fill, he said to the disciples, "Gather the fragments left over, so that nothing will be wasted." So they collected them and filled 12 wicker baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves that had been more than they could eat. When the people saw the sign he had done, they said, "This is truly the prophet, the one who is to come into the world." Since Jesus knew that they were going to come and carry him off to make him king, he withdrew again to the mountain alone. The Gospel of the Lord. Well, this chapter 6 of St. John's Gospel is so incredibly important, and we'll be reading from it for the next few weeks. But it's really the turning point in the Gospel of St. John. It leads into the Bread of Life discourse, which we'll see over the next few weeks. But here it is, Jesus feeding the crowds. And they respond by saying, "This is the great prophet that was to come into the world." And they see him as the new Moses. They see him as the fulfillment of everything from the Old Testament that was promised to the Jewish people. And he feeds them, and he takes care of their needs, and he heals the sick, and he provides them everything they need to carry on in their journey. And that's God's providence in our life, right? That's all the good things that we have, all the blessings that we have are due to God loving us and God caring for us, and God making sure that we are never without. And a lot of the time we focus on all the things we lack, and the things we want but we don't have, and the things that seem unjust and unfair. And yet, when we stop and pray and reflect, we realize that our whole lives are one blessing from one end to another, and that God has a plan for us, his providential plan. And he promises not even so much that this world will be perfect, but that he's preparing us for the journey to the promised land, and that he'll feed us along the way, if only we'll trust him. And this is the big picture for all the Jewish people, that God was keeping his promise. But the same thing goes on in the life of each one of us. And we've got to ask ourselves, do we appreciate that God is really caring for each of us? Is that where our spiritual life takes us, to a gratitude to God, to a remembrance every day of all the blessings that God has for us? I think the gospel is inviting us to that kind of gratitude and thanksgiving always. You know, we live in a world where there's plenty of reasons where we can get discouraged. But the virtue we need the most, perhaps, is that of gratitude to God. What are you going to do to give thanks to God today?